Mrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. I'm proud to present this video. Hello everybody, my name is the Bookatarian here on YouTube, and for my first video I decided to post my reaction and review on Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. I finished reading this about 24 hours ago. It's not been a very long time, just long enough for me to gather my thoughts and opinions on this book, what I liked and what I didn't like. I will go over all of those in this video today. So to start off with, I'm going to summarize the book, of course. So this book is about, it's history reimagined. So it's around the time of when the Civil War Reconstruction period would have happened. So the War of the Dead is mostly over by the time the story starts, but we're still dealing with the dead that are still very much around because obviously a lot more people are getting infected, and the disease that is linked with that plague, the undead plague it's called, the disease that is linked with the undead plague is evolving as some diseases are known to do. And so now there obviously is no cure at this point in time. And so the story follows the main character named Jane McKean, I think is her name, who is a black girl born to a lady of a plantation, former plantation. And so she's decided to leave her home to enter into one of the schools that have cropped up called combat schools that require black children from the age of 12 and up to basically join in the fight against the undead by becoming either parts of patrol. Mostly for the men, they go on patrol, and some of the women who don't pass on well enough to become what are called attendants. And attendants are basically personal bodyguards to the high-standing ladies of society, who of course are white, because that's how this time period goes still. So that was my summary for this book overall as a whole. It's the first book in, I don't know if it's a duology, trilogy, or series, but it's book number 1, and number 2 just came out like a month ago, not very long ago at all, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. But that was the summary, and I'm still in the spoilery-free section of this video. So some other thoughts I can give you that are not spoilery. I really enjoyed the characters for the most part. I like the representation a lot. There's a lot of black POCs, people of color, and other like minority representation. We even got some Native American representation, which I'm always happy to see that it was done well. And I think it was done well because the Native American character wasn't a main character, but a side character. I feel like if you're going to do something like Native representation, you really gotta buckle down and do your research. But the representation in the book was very good. And I really liked, oh my gosh, the plot. The plot was so good and so well paced. Like, it was literally, I was on a ride from page like 100, maybe even before then. It was a roller coaster ride, always going up. It like never went down. It hardly ever slowed down. I think it might have been a bit slow for like one chapter maybe, and then it was all it had me on the edge of my seat, and I could not just stop reading. Unfortunately, I did have to put it down a few times to do other things in real life. But aside from that, it was a real ride, this book. Some other things that I kind of didn't like were some of the tropes that I had in the book weren't my favorite tropes. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the bad boy that was used in this book. In this case, for Red Jack, or Jackson, was the ex-boyfriend of Jane. It's not really a spoiler because it's mentioned within like the first 5 pages. I didn't like his character so much. He was portrayed as a bad boy. and that never really changed throughout the entire book, and I'm kind of interested to see if he gets more development as we go on in the series. And another thing I did not like very much about this book that was involved with tropes, speaking words, not making much sense, the girl hate. I did not appreciate the girl hate that took place in at least half of the book. The first half, there was a lot of girl hate, specifically aimed at one side character, but it did get better. So I'm willing to let that slide just a little bit, but it was a pretty big hindrance of me giving this book a full 5-star rating. And Love Triangle. I don't know if they're going to push through with it in the second book. I really hope they don't, because I have this one main guy that I really like who was not. I have my ship already for this book, and I would really rather it not turn into a love triangle. I'd rather it go in a different way than just a stereotypical trope, because I've witnessed love triangles happen and executed in very bad ways in books, and I'm kind of tired of that trope now. It just happens way too often for me to like very much. Alright, and the last thing that I didn't like so much about this book was, I guess, how unrealistic some of the reactions to the events of this book was, because the job of an attendant is very much, you gotta kill people, man. You gotta kill the undead. They're called shamblers. I don't know if I mentioned that. There's a lot of killing. And granted, most of the things that are getting killed are already undead people, are already dead people. But just the reactions that these girls have towards killing people is not as realistic as I would like. And I think it will progress into a more realistic version in the second book. At least that's what I'm hoping. But for now, it wasn't so realistic in this book, and that's just another thing that I didn't like. But the list of things that I didn't like, very small. The list of things that I loved are a lot, and I can't get into that before going into the spoilery section, so if you don't want to be spoiled for this book, I would click off of this video now and come back when you have read the book. So I decided for this review I would focus on the characters and their arcs as they go along, just because there are a lot of characters that I can talk about in this manner. So I'll start off with Red Jack and Lily. Now, as I mentioned before, I was not a fan of Jackson. He's the classic bad boy, and I kind of get it, and he worked with his character. It worked for his character, and it makes a lot of sense for the time period, given how so many of the people that are still alive at this point have to be hardened in some sort of way in order to survive, or you have somebody else for you who works to protect you and keep you alive in the attendant's manner. But Jackson, he was just a bad boy, and that seemed to be his character. Granted, he was very protective of his sister, which I did like, and it kind of justified it a little bit. His protection for his sister was very nice to see, but I don't know. I hope that that Jackson and Jane don't get together again. But I do like the fact that they had a relationship in the past, and it was kind of, that tension was there and justified, and so if they did get together, not that I want them to, it would feel very realistic, in my opinion. It would be realistic, and it would be completely and socially acceptable for the two of them to get together, because they are both black, and goodness knows, if we go the way I want them, if the book goes the way I want it to go, there's gonna be some lines crossed as far as the time period goes and mixed race relationships. Oh boy, it's gonna be interesting. So yeah, Red Jack and Lily, that's all I have to say, except for the fact that I hated Lily. I hated her so much. Jackson had his love for his sister going on, and like how Jane felt about him, to kind of redeem himself for me full on hating him. I hated Lily. I hated how she was just so rude, apparently, to Jane. Like, we got some backstory about their relationship between Jane and Jackson. And apparently Lily hated her when she was dating her brother. And being a little sister myself, I was like, oh, no. I can't relate to you, honey. I'm really sorry. Cannot relate. I would never straight up hate someone my brothers were dating because they were taking up their time. Granted, it could be the time period. It could be the fact that Lily is black and I am white, so maybe I just won't ever get it. It's probably not that superficial, though. I just don't like her. And that's okay, because there are plenty of other black characters in this book that I enjoy very much. Speaking of which, Kate. Catherine Devereaux is... I didn't like her so much when I was reading the book, but after I finished, I was like, oh yeah, she's pretty great. She's fantastic. That corset, Kate. Are you wearing the corset? Have you taken off the corset? That joke is so funny. It was woven in through the book so many times. Not too many to be obnoxious, but it was just so good. She's constantly being on the side of maintaining the fashions of the day over being able to function as an attendant. You need to be able to get into a scruff at a moment's notice. You can't be restricting yourself by wearing a corset, Kate. You just can't. Some problems I have with her storyline, though, is that I didn't really pick up on the fact that she was raised in a brothel until they mentioned it for like the second time, and then I was like, oh, okay. It was just kind of dropped. In a way, there was no build-up. I kind of would have liked it to be like a confession scene or something to help build the friendship between Kate and Jane, but we never really got that. So that was that. Not the fact that she was raised in a brothel, that does not bother me, but the fact that it was just kind of like something we were supposed to already have figured out in the book, and maybe I'm just not that quick and wasn't paying attention when it was noticed or brought up in the book, and that's fine. But so yeah, I really like Kate. I really like how she's not looking for romance, man. She does not care for marrying a man and bettering her station. She just wants to see the world, and that's great. And what I mentioned earlier in this video, a lot of the girl hate was aimed at Kate. And I could kind of see why she wouldn't like it. Jane wouldn't like Kate because she was just too perfect and teacher's pet, everyone's favorite. And I also really liked how that didn't work in Kate's favor. Even though she was the teacher's pet, she was too fair-skinned and too beautiful. Well, actually, I don't think fair skin played much into that at all. But she was too beautiful for any person looking for an attendant to want to hire her. And I'm just like, dang, that sucks. That really sucks. And honestly, I just don't think that Kate really deserved most, if not all, of the girl hate that she got from Jane in the beginning of the book. And I was glad to see that they actually developed a friendship by the end of the book. And I was just like, yay, girl friendships. They're awesome. So now we get to Jane. And Jane, in the beginning of like the first 100 pages, I was not sure if I was going to like Jane or not. Just because she was all over the place with her character, what she believed in. I was actually kind of fascinated by the end of the book when I realized that she's like the perfect combination of all 4 Hogwarts houses. Literally, she's a Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Slytherin, and a Ravenclaw all into one. And I don't see that in characters very often. So I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. You're cool. But her attitude towards fighting, I mean, if you didn't feel confident in yourself, you wouldn't make a very good attendant, so that's understandable. But she got overconfident too often, and a lot of the problems that they come across was because she was a little bit too overconfident and not careful enough. And so it's just like, alright, that's fine. And when she met Gideon in Summerland, I knew where they were going to go with it from like the first second they met. I was like, okay, please let it just be a very, very slow burn and realistic. And it's going to be a relationship with a lot of struggles because it's star-crossed relationships, man. The star-crossed lovers. Society is definitely not going to want to let them be together. But Jane's loyalty to Rose Hill and wanting to go back. She's only becoming an attendant so she can protect her home. And I love the relationship, even though it's very screwed up, that she has with her mom, given the fact that her mother tried to drown her when she was 5. That was weird. I was reading that scene, I was like, oh, why do you love her again? But it was just one of those situations in a horrible world where you're like, why would I let her live through the pain and agony that would happen to her when she's black, because she's black. And so there was that. I was just sitting here like, oh, that's okay. But yeah, both her mom and Jane love each other very much, and I really like seeing that positive parental-child relationship, even if it did have its rocky ups and downs. That was great to see. And I did really like the little bit of a bloom of relationship between Gideon and Jane, even if it doesn't go into anything romantic. I'd just be fine if they're friends. In fact, we need more friendships between men and women in books as a whole. It's very necessary. So next, oh yeah, all of the twists. Like I said before, this book is a roller coaster. It's so fast paced that like I almost didn't want to bring it with me to read before I start working because I have a full-time job. But I didn't want to put it down ever, which made doing real life things very difficult. It was very difficult to do adult things when reading this book when I didn't want to put it down. And all of the plot from like halfway through the book, I did not see any of that coming at all. Like Summerland was a huge loop for me. I was not expecting it to happen that way at all. And like a lot of the plot points that were big surprise twists at the end, which the ending had so many twists. It was crazy how many twists the ending of this book had. First of all, Gideon Carr. Gideon is the mayor's son. Called that after the second time he mentioned his father in whatever conversation with Jane that was. I did guess that he would be the mayor's son because he didn't say anything just beyond my father sent me here. And so I was like, oh, he's the mayor, isn't he? Probably. And so I felt good about guessing that, but that was about the only thing I could have ever guessed. Another thing that I liked a lot was the fact that her mother is actually black, but just fair-skinned enough that people would have confused her as white. And I did not see that coming at all. I thought she was just a legitimate white person, and I was like, I could not for the life of me understand why she would care so much for Jane. And I'm just like, well, now that makes a heck of a lot more sense. She cares for Jane because, they're both black, even though she can't come out as black. Either way. That plot twist was major, and oh my gosh, just the entire last 100 pages of the book was just so good and gripping. And yeah, it had disabled rep, which I was not at all expecting that at all. But Gideon walks with a limp, and I'm really interested to see why it is he walks with a limp. Because, it'd just be an interesting story. A Harvard man who has a limp. Like, was he fighting in the Civil War before he went to Harvard? I don't know. But we didn't get very much backstory on Gideon, and I really hope that we get more of an expansion in the story too. And yeah, just more development on the characters is really what I'm looking for the next book. That is all I really have to say about this book in this review. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in my next video.